Worldwide movement, peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq hollering at you one more again. All right, man. Another beautiful day, true indeed, as we have had that plentiful. Man, you talk about, for one, the weather patterns, of course, this being spring, I know I certainly have, and most of us have waited all winter to thrive in this time of year, right? Uh, so certainly the energy is high in that regard, but just in general, right? Those of us who have become more sensitive to the subtle energies, right? Uh, will tell you that you can just feel it in the field, so to speak, right? Or feel it in the air. Where we tend to say, "Hey, somebody chiming in." Thank you very much, folks. Please like, share, subscribe. Please make sure every time you come to the channel, check in at the community section. Always got some very important and specific information there. And for that matter, always make sure you check out my Twitter feed. Check out my videos on Rumble if you go to that platform. And please always check out my music on all the streaming platforms like iHeartRadio, Apple Music, etc. You guys know better than me. True indeed. Every time I bump into my nephews or somebody, they tell me about another streaming platform I have no idea about, right? So I don't do the best at keeping up with that, but I'm getting better. Just please make sure you tell everybody that you know. And please tell some folks that you don't know. Make sure that we help to continue to grow the worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. I thank and love all of you, truly, because we are making profound changes collectively in the world. If we really stop and take note, you see people speaking up with a free and sovereign voice, right? All over the planet, you see actions of free and sovereign people who are stepping up to governments who have unfortunately have many levels of corruption, right? The depopulationist movement of these socially economic elites that have employed that in so many different levels and nefarious agendas, but we'll push all that to the side because truly it has become that, right? It has become the afterthought for those who are going deeper into our awakening process and realizing the tangible nature of a new high vibrational frequency paradigm for us now. We are indeed well amidst a profound paradigm shift on this planet because that is the will of the people of this planet, right? And we have truly forecast that out into the quantum field, and we're seeing it strongly reverberate back. All right. So that's certainly one of our abilities that we are starting to collectively take advantage of. I want to talk to you today about a technique that individually we can refine, right? Which of course would also aid us collectively, but individually, let's talk about, and a lot of people more are talking about looking within, right? We kind of have heard that term floated out a lot more uh, as of recent years, and I just want to talk a little bit more about what exactly we're referring to. Um, uh, you're actually talking about delving into higher states of consciousness, right? When we're looking within, um, we are utilizing higher brain waves, right? Um, we're using faded brain waves, and then in different deeper states, um, when we're sort of dipping in and out of that sleep reality, right? And there are even some techniques of sort of waking yourself up, right, in multiple phases, in and out of that sort of staying in that almost sleep, almost awake phase, right? Where you're sort of, and the reason that that's effective um, is because you're still in a somewhat semi multi dimensional state when you're first awakening, right? When you're sleeping, you're not tethered in a dimensional sense nearly as much, or sometimes not at all. Your conscious is not tethered to your physical vessel, right? Um, this is why you hear people talking about techniques like astral planing and so forth. Um, but when you are sort of hovering in between those states, you still have a certain level of multidimensionality that can aid in creativity, in problem solving, in working out the emotional issues, right? When you're in this state, um, you're also able to dip into delta waves, right? And these are just the sort of brain waves that you are producing and doing mental work in when you are dipping in and out or dipping into higher states of consciousness, looking deeper within yourself, which you're actually looking into um, using these higher states of consciousness when your brain is putting out these higher uh, and functioning on these higher levels of brain waves, the theta and delta brainwave levels, um, you're more able to access your Akash, right? Um, which for those not to go into it because you can certainly go back and check out some videos I have on your Akash, but the Akash contains both the Akashic record and the Akash contains really the possibilities of multiple, we would say, future timelines. But when you start getting into that, you have to bring into account the relativity of time itself, which is certainly a whole nother conversation. Pardon me, folks. But yeah, when we're looking into our Akash, um, specifically when we're looking back into the Akashic record, and the Akashic record certainly contains with it all that has been experienced, right? If we talk about collectively, all that has been experienced by humanity on the planet, and individually, all that you have experienced, right, in the totality of your lifetimes on this planet. All of that is contained within your Akash, which is certainly a wealth of knowledge and information that we would love to be able to tap into and utilize that incredible wisdom, right? And you most certainly have the ability to do that. Um, just know that looking within is when you are going into these higher states of consciousness to be able to dip into accessing your Akash. Um, so that's powerful. I mean, we have seen how this has, uh, for a long time, shown itself up as very powerful uh, techniques to improve our functionality. Right? Years ago, they came out with the Silva techniques from Jose Silva, which had proven to have very profound results and increase efficacy of learning and uh, mental and even physical performance improvements when people find themselves dipping into these higher states of consciousness, looking within themselves. Folks, when I say looking within, I want you to understand that literally We are looking and delving within our own DNA. Remember that DNA is indeed the most complex storage modality that we can just about refer to, right? Many of our computer models and computer chip models, what we sort of model how we create new computer chips, comes off of like how DNA is information is stored within DNA, right? Um, which in general, folks, anytime you're talking about uh, complex technologies, you're often talking about things that are mimicking humans, and or at least aspects of like the computer being an effort to mimic the human brain, which really we may not value as as being as complex of a tool it is. But believe me, folks, your brain performs more complex calculations than you give it credit for. um, just in your average everyday life and the functionality of your body, uh, which would be comparable to the most advanced robotics that you could possibly think of. In fact, we would our physical bodies in comparison would blow that out of the water. You've got to understand you're magnificent, folks. We have these abilities within us and are finding out and uncovering more and more as we are being exposed to these higher levels uh, uh, of energies that we've always been receiving or exposed to from the sun, and from new energies that we find ourselves now being exposed to um, in this section of the galaxy that we are in, that our solar system is in its orbit around the galaxy, right? This section of the galaxy has got some incredible new energies, very profound energies that are proving to be very transformative for humanity. And one of the abilities that we're finding ourselves having more and more access to utilizing as we are more exposed to these energies, are these techniques of looking within that I'm talking about, which are certainly not new, folks. Just because I mentioned Jose Silva, but I want you to understand that these techniques are ancient, right? And have been described to us in a myriad of ways by the indigenous folks um, all around the planet, right? Um, if we had stopped to take a little bit more deeper note and listen, um, they most certainly have advised us of these techniques for quite some time, right? Um, so always very important for us to make sure that we're paying attention to the techniques and some of the things that we have lost um, record of, right? In contemporary disciplines of science and arts that we once had, right? And some of those um, reverberations of those things remain in the tales and instructions of the indigenous folks of the planet. So we should indeed pay attention there. There are treasures of the wisdom of the ages that we can gain when we pay attention to the indigenous, right? Um, So let's make sure that we are utilizing these techniques, right? As we again will find ourselves much more um, sensitive to the changes in subtle energies that are greater, affording us the ability to access these techniques of going within ourselves, literally extrapolating DNA information out of our DNA, right? Um, because there's a lot more there than you think, folks. True indeed. True indeed. Um, just as you have your heredity, you've got the wisdom of your ancestors within your DNA, right? And that's not a treasure you want to ever lose, right? Or lose access to. So let's make sure that we're valuing and practicing, getting better at these techniques, right? And that we are expanding and utilizing more of these techniques to find out what works best for us as we continue forward on our path of ascension, right? Um, Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the mind, right? Since we're talking about dipping into um, higher brain waves and higher states of consciousness and whatnot. Um, the mind in general uh, can be looked at, I think, a lot differently than what we may have traditionally become accustomed to. Um, your mind is actually not necessarily just this closed off, localized thing, right? Your mind is more so access to what I would refer to as the mind field, right? Which is the common range of frequencies that we find ourselves projecting thoughts to and through the quantum field, right? Um, Thoughts being electromagnetic signals and impulses that we most certainly can and do project outward, as well as we receive um, uh, thoughts and thought forms from external sources as well, right? Um, but your mind in that capacity can be looked at as more so in a location in the mind field, like your specific location in the mind field, almost like your address in the mind field, right? um, and you could almost think of your mind and the way we access our mind and the thoughts that we either receive or originate in our mind. um, you can think of that almost as like your email center, right? Um, Especially when we talk about thoughts that we receive from external sources, right? Because you do. Some of those are from other people, many of those are from other people, whether we are sensitive enough to sort of decode that to be able to uh, uh, articulate it, right? Or not. And when you talk about that, then you could say you're delving into a little bit more and more our abilities surrounding telepathy, which we will indeed and have already indeed begun to see increased levels of being evident um, amongst a lot of folks, right? Particularly younger folks, right? Who are born already coming into the planet on a higher vibrational frequency, and that resonance already um, sort of in their vessel, right? Um, their ability to tune in, um, and certainly if they have not been exposed to um, as many of the calcification agents that cause calcification of our pineal organ, which certainly gives us the ability to refine most of these techniques and to tune in, right? Utilizing your pineal um, without even necessarily consciously thinking of it like it's a dial, you're actually tuning into different frequencies utilizing your pineal. Um, so again, as far as your mind and thoughts also originating from external sources, I said that they certainly can be thoughts projected by others. Remember earlier I stated that we project thoughts out into the mind field, right, all of the time. So that is something that others can pick up on, whether they do so on a conscious or subconscious level. Okay. Um, And similarly, you can also receive thoughts or suggestions from external sources that are indeed artificial, folks. And you do receive some of these things from technology around you. In fact, if you pay attention, I won't specifically name, but there are devices that advertise the fact that they monitor and track and tap into, at least they would have to tap into to some degree to monitor your sleep patterns and the different stages of sleep that you may enter into, right? They um, sort of brag about the fact that they're keeping track of your circadian rhythms, right? Um, these are very interesting, I'll say, technologies, right? Um, that we just have to realize with just a slight bit of creativity, have the potential very much to, I won't say interfere with, but to project to you different thought forms and or suggestions, right? Which we've already, if you just do a little bit of research, folks, if you want to say that, oh, he's dipping into mind control and that whole thing, well, that's actually not a new thing. If you look into that, there have actually been quote unquote mind control or mind or mood altering techniques that have been um, patented years and years ago, right? And have actually, to different degrees, been put in place. And um, there have been technologies that have been used on the population, right? The Brunswick TV, if I'm not mistaken, I could be uh, misstating that. If I am, pardon me. Um, Utilized sending subliminal messages in between frames, right, of television programming to have advertising suggestions that were sent to those who utilize that particular device. These technologies are, in fact, not new, folks, right? Um, and it suggests to you the way that that industry has paid attention to things that you may not have, or that you may not have been instructed to pay attention to. Doesn't mean that there isn't someone else out there, often in the big business or the industrial corporate environment, who will take advantage of those things. Like these techniques that I said are actually ancient techniques. But yeah, getting back to your mind operating as sort of like email, the same way that when you are operating your email, you have the choice, right? To open up or not even open up an email. You can just delete it right away without opening it up, right? Or you can open it up, store the information, archive it, etc. The same technique or ability we can utilize um, with thoughts, folks, right? Um, Many people around the world struggle with invasive thought forms and suggestions, right? And have a difficult time clearing their minds of thoughts. It's enough that we deal with the thoughts that originate with us, let alone thoughts that may be external in origin, right? Again, both from the thoughts that are put out into the quantum field by folks around you, right? As well as thoughts that are generated from other external sources that may be artificial. There's a lot always coming into us mentally, right? And when we start to be cognizant of that or more aware of it on a conscious level, we can indeed sort of add that level of functionality to our mind where we have the ability to recognize um, the origin of thoughts, right? And then determine whether or not we even want to let it be something um, that we accept in or just instantly reject, right? Um, which, if you really start to delve into understanding your thoughts and looking into uh, motives and the subtle nature of your thoughts, right? You can easily diagnose and digest what is actually useful to you, what serves you. Um, and when you start to recognize thoughts that do not serve you, you're often looking at thoughts that have originated from some external source, excuse me, from some external source, right? And having that level of functionality with our minds can be incredibly useful, right? And even can slip into being useful in your meditation techniques, right? Having that clarity of mind. So let's always make sure that we are utilizing um, those techniques, from us understanding that these are actually not new techniques, and make sure we're always giving credit to the indigenous of the planet who have introduced these techniques to us long ago and who we often don't give credit to, right? For their contributions to humanity, which have been far greater than many of us acknowledge. All right. So let's make sure that we do that. Let's make sure that we're utilizing all of these techniques in mastery of ourselves, right? Mentally, spiritually, physically, that we are indeed becoming masters of ourselves, folks. I often say the most powerful words ever spoken or thought or to be recognized as written. Know thyself. All right. All right, folks. Thank you once again for chiming in as I have completed, or at least for now, completed this video on this subject. This is something that I say for now because this is something I'll likely revisit. So look out for that. All right, folks. Thank you once again. I love you all. Please continue to like, share, subscribe. We are growing in the subscriptions pretty soon. We're going to hit that 444, like I said, and then we're going to take off and grow exponentially to 44, 44, and beyond. All right. So thank you again, folks. I love you all. Worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq. I'm out.